So, we have a lot of speaking to do, mainly about how badly used and underused Vampire the Masquerade license is. Once again, I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about the fact that there aren't that many good vampire games. There is one vampire game that I really like that's not from Vampire the Masquerade franchise, and that's a whole different video altogether. But in general, vampire games are kind of few and far between, so when a franchise is focused on vampire games, I can't help but get invested. The issue is that I have never seen a big franchise ever make such weird decisions when it comes to what kind of games they're releasing. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. So I broke down all Vampire the Masquerade games into everything that's not a visual novel or text-based game, to visual novels and text-based games. When that's a breakdown that you can do, you already can see one of the problems, right? Right there and then. But let's just read out what we have. So we have Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, and it's an RPG, and it came out in 2000s, like the year 2000. This is not a Paradox game, this was an Activision game, I believe. Then we have Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is an RPG, and it came out in the year 2004. This is not a Paradox game, this is also believe was an Activision game. Just like before the whole, franchise collapsed because White Wolf was no more for a while. At the very least, the division that was making video games in particular, it all just kind of fell through. And then the whole label was in limbo for quite a while. I think it was Troika Games that made it, and White Wolf was just the people that owned the license, and Troika Games were the ones that fell through. But anyway, the video is not about that. So eventually Paradox gets the license, to get the tabletop games, tabletop books, but they also have access to making video games. And what did they do? Well, we have Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York as their first release, and that was a visual novel. Then came Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York, which was also a visual novel. Then came Night Road, Vampire the Masquerade Night Road, which was a text-based game, no visuals even. Then we had Vampire the Masquerade Out for Blood, which came out in 2021, which was also a text-based game. Then we have Vampire the Masquerade Parliament of Knives, which is also a text-based game that also came out in 2021. Then we finally have something that isn't a text-based game or a visual novel. It is Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, but it is a battle royale because, the genres that definitely sell well and are not risky at all, and you definitely don't need to worry about how many players you have, are definitely battle royales. Now, if you look up Blood Hunt, the servers are still up, but there is no dev team. Everybody has left a long time ago, and the game has effectively been discontinued because, surprise, surprise, it did not bring in money. Proceeding, we had Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song, which is an adventure game, and it is okay, I guess. It's a bit middling out there, but it's not a visual novel or a text-based game, and it isn't a weird choice for genre. So it has that going for it, which is nice. Oh, right! And on the same year, we have Vampire the Masquerade Sins of Desires, which is also a text-based game, we're still in 2022. Now, the only release in the year 2023 for Vampire the Masquerade was Vampire the Masquerade Justice, which is a virtual reality horror game, because one place where you can definitely find a lot of people to sell your game to is definitely the ones that have the quite expensive virtual reality setup. That's totally not limiting the amount of players that you can. It's definitely not a very weird choice for what to do with your franchise, just like Blood Hunt was. And then we have Vampire the Masquerade Reckoning of New York, which is a visual novel, came out in 2024, and from the looks of it, uses AI art because why pay for the visual aspect of a visual novel when you can just be a glorified text-based game but with visuals that you didn't necessarily pay for? At the very least got ripped off by the company that you hired to do it. Like, the art has definitely taken a massive hit right there. And do you see a bit of a problem here? We have quantity. Where is the quality, though? We have 4 text-based games. We have... And, here's the thing. I played Night Road. Nothing wrong with that, but, did you know that text-based games can be like 20 hours long? Do you know one of the issues with Vampire the Masquerade text-based games? Their save files corrupt really easily. I ran into that problem on Night Road. It's apparently even worse on the other ones. Not to mention some nonsensical choices that people were complaining about, with Sins of the Sires is dropping into mixed reviews by this point. Then we have 3 visual novels. The last one is now using artwork that doesn't look like it was made by humans. We have 2 pre-Paradox games, which are quite good. Then we have really bizarre choices, like a battle royale and a VR game. And then we have Swansong. And that's what we have. And we have Bloodlines 2 releasing, which is not at the same scope as Bloodlines 1. Bloodlines 1 is of a higher scope, with a company that's known for walking sims hired to do it. And then what? More visual novels? More text-based games? Which of the columns do you think will hit the bottom of this picture first? Because at the moment, my money is on text-based games. They were like mass producing those, but they seem to have stopped. And then they did a couple of visual, like, it's very rare for Paradox to use this IP to make like a quality game. And I don't understand why, because you know what is kind of a quality game? That's part of the franchise that Paradox owns. Princess of Darkness, the Crusader Kings 3 mod. That is an actual quality game. It converts Crusader Kings 3 into Vampire the Masquerade at their medieval setting pretty well. Considering that Paradox is known for their strategy titles, you would have thunk that they would have made like this, something like this themselves? Something that isn't just a mod? You know, maybe a strategy game, perhaps. I've seen other strategy games that had supernatural elements. I don't think that would be outside of scope of possibility. I think that would align pretty well with what Paradox is as a company, but that's something that we haven't seen. You know what got me excited about the franchise the most recently from the things that we currently have? That's right, it's Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines Demake, which is just like a 2-hour boogie game on itch.io by an independent person that just switched things around, made this for free. You know what other kind of games that you could make that aren't text-based games or visual novels? How about a 2D adventure game? That's not a text-based game nor a visual novel. It would require more things for you to do to make it a game, but this is once again something that's fairly limited scope. And Paradox was really complaining that they won't be able to do RPGs again because they have no idea what they're doing. And it costs a lot. Okay, how about something smaller then? What you're looking at is Blackwell Legacy, a game that I believe I did play through on my channel at one point. It's a detective adventure game with supernatural elements. You play as a woman who has a ghost attached to her, and you go through like a whole case. And there's several games in this series. Considering Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodlines remake, Bloodlust, I believe this would fit in and slot in very well into the setting. Like, this wouldn't be super hard to make, and it wouldn't be a text game or a visual novel. How about there is a genre that kind of everybody sort of forgot about? How about a platformer? What you're looking at here is Shadow Man Remastered, which kind of has those, dark and grungy vibes. You kind of traversing an underworld that kind of honestly looks very sparse and a bit like a madhouse, but it has that darkness going for them, and definitely proves that as a concept, a platformer that's focused on the dark aspects could indeed work. So, how about something like this? Definitely very limited scope, but it's not a text game or a visual novel. I know, amazing. Okay, I will tone down my sarcasm a bit. At the moment, what I'm trying to say is that it's been a while since I felt excited about anything that's coming from the franchise, and it would be very nice if that kind of turned around. I do believe that Paradox is a big enough company in order to make something a bit more than text games and visual novels, and I don't actually know of any other franchise that was done this dirty, where they're like mainline games became just like a hodgepodge of really unfitting genres, and the majority of their output became just copy paste. Well, that would be kind of offensive. It's not the text based games and the visual novels, they're not copy pasted. Somebody worked very hard on them, but its format was definitely copy pasted, where everybody kind of used the same text-based game engine. If you played one of them, you kind of played them all because you know how they behave. There aren't like all that many surprises or changes. Of course the plot entirely changes, but it's a bit like reading a book with a faulty save mechanism on top of it. It's not the most exciting thing to play, nor is it all that fun when novelty wears off and you realize that this franchise is only putting this out. It actually kinda becomes a little bit sad. And I think that Vampire the Masquerade deserves better. I wish that it would climb out of sad. And obviously, unaffiliated people working for free are doing very novel and interesting things. Like, Crusader Kings 3 mod, or remake of Bloodlines. It's novel, it's interesting, it's fun, it has a bit of humor, it flows well. There are definitely genres of games that are a lot smaller in scope than full-blown RPGs that don't require all that, like, super a lot of money invested, that are still a bit of a step up from text-based games. So if you just like started making 2D adventure games, threw in maybe a platformer here and there, produced some limited scope adventure games, if you feel brave enough, go 3D. But these are small projects. They're still not gonna require that much of investment. But it would be a bit more courageous. It would be a bit more fun than a text-based game. And maybe we could like insert a new category down here. And then maybe when your company is doing better, Paradox, you could explore making a grand strategy title. I've heard that, you're good at those. You could probably do that. Maybe throw in an RPG where you hired another company working on it here from time to time, but don't just use visual novels and text-based games as if they're there to bring you money. Because it doesn't look good, and it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't make me feel excited. It makes me feel sad for the genre to a point where I just sit here for 15 minutes rambling at my screen, talking to myself, because definitely nobody important is gonna receive this message. Where anything would be a step up, really. And I gave you examples to just give you maybe a couple of ideas of where that step up could be. Small projects, limited projects, even indie projects. They're just not text-based games, please. And perhaps limit the overly ambitious experimentation with things that everybody else can see won't really be a reasonable investment of your money, like VR games. Unless, of course, you want to make it cross non-VR compatible. VR modes in games that sell as non-VR games are very much appreciated. VR games, like standalone games that are side by side to a non-VR game that has the same plot and everything, but one is playable in VR and the other one's playable on PC, those are very much appreciated. Even console releases have more people buying them than VR games. You could probably launch on Switch and have more of an audience, despite the fact that Switch tends to be a family-friendly platform and you own a not very family-friendly brand. You would still probably get more sales than when you decide to release a VR game. Battle royales are also not the greatest idea. Actually, any kind of multiplayer game that you need to update and keep in live service that depends on people playing it day in and day out, aka you need a stable player number that definitely does not fall, is not a good idea. Those games are really hard to run. Even if they seem simple on paper, simple to begin with, they're hard to keep your population in. It's why it's hard for Call of Duty and Battlefield to get a new competitor, because you need to pull in that audience. It's why MMOs are so risky, because you need a constant influx of players that keep on playing your game day in or day out, or everyone else will be like, well, this matchmaking is taking forever. I can't get anyone to play with. Therefore, you know what you can do if you want to make something like that? How about a 4-player co-op game where you play against the environment, like Left 4 Dead? There has been an influx of games like these recently, and at the very least, it's up to the players to find their 3 friends, and you don't need to have a concurrent population on those. So it's pressure off you, and if you're gonna just stick with what you know, which is, well, grand strategy games, then why don't you make one? Why is it up to a mod for one to exist? This franchise is really it's not getting the respect that it needs from Paradox, I think. It's not getting the support that it needs from Paradox, I think. I think it deserves a little bit better. Wouldn't you agree? And this isn't me talking down to you. If you like text-based games or visual novels, I'm not here to be like, I'm gonna take these games away from you right now. This is me just saying that there could be more than 3 categories in here. It's kind of sad that everything else, like, is 5 games at the moment. And visual novels and text-based games are so quantifiable that they can have a category of their own. At the very least, throw in enough variety that I can't just do a chart like this, or that all else just kind of, fills in and reaches the bottom. And then I would be like, well, I have to categorize it differently now because it's, fix that ratio. Invest in some projects, some fun projects, please. Do something that isn't just a visual novel or a text-based game. If you can't do big projects, that's okay. I understand. It is fine. Make the small ones, just not this level of small, please. Just a tad bit bigger. Like a 2D environment that I can walk around. I will already accept, okay? That is just a tad bit bigger. Now, thank you for whoever has been listening to this rant. I know that as a consumer, I'm entirely powerless to change that. If you're an indie game developer and I accidentally give you a game idea to make with generic vampires, cool. I will probably be there and I will probably play it. That's all the best for me. I'm not entirely attached to just this franchise. It's just that this is the most prominent vampire franchise and I would like it to do a little bit better. Please. Well, a little bit more effort. Just a tiny, teeny bit so that there's something, a tiny bit for me to be excited about. I would love to feel excited again. That would be nice. But once again, I'm just falling back into the ranting, and I don't want to be ranting. Actually, when I'm recording this, Steam Black Friday sales have just gone by, and I got myself Shadows Over Loathing, which, if you don't know, is a Stickman game. I would rather be playing that one right now. And yeah, it's literally Stickmen in black and white. But the animations are kind of cool and plentiful. There's a lot of comedy, and there's a lot of game with a lot of mechanics. With just Stickmen, I am not that hard to please. I just bit more than these 2 categories. That's all I ask. And perhaps better investment decisions than battle royales and VR games. VR games are awesome for people that have a VR headset. Majority of people will not. Perhaps take us into account. If you're not gonna take us into account, at least please a different kind of audience. Release on the PlayStation or an Xbox or something. Minus the VR aspect. At that point, you'll still be exposing your brand to a bit more people than the VR enjoyers over there. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying VR, but it's nice when a VR game releases and there's like a non-VR version for the non-VR peasants to enjoy alongside the quite sparse and limited VR populace. That would be nice. Then we can actually take a look at that game and enjoy it. A horror game set in Vampire the Masquerade universe seems like a good fit. Too bad that practically nobody has VR. At the very least, VR ownership is fairly rare. It is an expensive set of equipment that you're gonna use for a fairly small amount of titles. And the world isn't doing too well right now. So not a lot of people are investing into that. At the very least, if you own a console, a lot more titles. And some of these equipments are kind of cheaper to get. I mean, Xboxes try to floor themselves with their prices. Handhelds, Steam handhelds are kind of popular. Switch is kind of popular. Please don't target the phone market, but there's definitely a lot more people that have phones than people that have VR headsets. I guarantee you, actually, there's more people that have phones than they have computers. And I'm just saying that's probably not where your investment should fall when you're thinking that, you know, that you're not recouping investment from this franchise and you're afraid to create big titles because they cost a lot of money. It's probably I don't know what happened with the decisions of this franchise is what I'm trying to say in a very, very roundabout way. So anyways, I'm just gonna be confused in here for a while, and I'm gonna go and play the games that I bought that have nothing to do with Vampire the Masquerade. It would be nice to buy something that's Vampire the Masquerade theme again, wouldn't it? But I don't really want it to be a visual novel or a text-based game. I'm not. That's not how you're gonna catch me as an audience. So yeah, maybe something else, please. If I'm not gonna end this video, I'm just gonna continue going into circles, so thank you everybody for watching. If you like my channel, then don't just subscribe blindly, but maybe like go around and see what kind of other videos I produce and see if you like those. Spooky occulty games are very much on theme in here. Some retro games are very much on theme in here. Occult stuff in general is very much on theme in here right now. And also, thank you for people that support me on Patreon. You are all really, really wonderful. And I'm very thankful for you. It is for you that I can even have a big gaming catalog that I can now escape to play, that doesn't just leave me entirely baffled in the company's decision making. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and hopefully I'm gonna see you the next time. Bye bye.